Hi everyone, my name is Ada. I'm going to tell you about my genius plan of how I decided to get rich, using child labor in the process. And it worked out for me, though not all according to plan. I grew up in poverty. I was always short of money. I did not eat well, I was even worse dressed. But the worst thing was that my parents did not give a damn about it. They earned very little and settled for that, sometimes drinking alcohol to spite the government. I left them as soon as I turned 14. We had a big fight that day. I asked my mother to sew my jacket up, to which she told me that we didn't have a thread and needle. I accused them of not even being able to buy thread and needles, but having money for booze.
Don't even dare to lecture us on what we're able to do and what we're not. There are families who don't have a roof over their heads. At least you have this.
A roof? You can't call the stinking den with rats and cockroaches a home. It's cleaner in the stairwell than it is here.
Well, you should have cleaned it up. You should have cleaned up.
But what's the point? You behave like pigs, and after my cleaning, there are bottles and garbage lying on the floor. You can't clean, you can't cook, you can't even work properly. You both work only for yourselves. Why was I even born, huh?
How dare you? Where's your gratitude for me giving birth to you? Toxicosis, insomnia. Do you have any idea how hard it is to raise a child?
No one forced you to give birth at 15, Mom. Mom gave me a second slap in the face.
What did you say? You ungrateful daughter!
Yes, I am ungrateful to you, because there is nothing to thank you for. I'm sick of it all. I'm leaving.
Get out. See how soon you come back. You just can't survive on the streets.
In some ways, they were right. It was hard and scary for me on the streets alone. No money, no food, and no decent place to sleep. At least the streets were cleaner than my house. That was good. I never went home. I lived there until I was 21, but I didn't fall onto the level of a homeless person. I regularly looked for a part-time job, and with that money, I managed to rent a tiny room with a shower, and life became a little less sad. My parents weren't even looking for me. I think they had it in for the best. And I had only one goal: to make money. I thought for a long time about how to do it, and I came up with an idea. I decided to start selling household appliances. I found a few warehouses in town where equipment is subject to write-off, but it worked. It's kind of like stealing, and at the same time, not. I carried more or less new microwaves, phones, TVs. There were cool refrigerators, but I didn't have the energy to lug them around, no matter how hard I tried. Once I carried one small one out, and 2 teenagers offered to help me. I told them I'd bought it, but they didn't care. They carried it home. Afterward, I sold everything a little cheaper on hand to those willing in poorer neighborhoods. There was a lot of demand for the underpriced stuff. Yeah, I'd take more time if I had helpers, I said to myself. I was lucky enough to meet those teenagers again, and they helped me once again. This time, I gave them $5 each. They were so excited. Where are you from? Why are you wandering around at night?
Looking for a living, just like you.
What kind of living?
We all know we won't give you up.
Do you want to share?
We do.
What's your names?
I'm Ralph. I'm Dolph.
Are you brothers?
Yeah, twins.
They took off their hoods, and I got a good look at them. Wow, you guys really look alike. And your parents don't scold you for wandering around at night?
We're from boarding school.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it, we don't even know them.
Yeah, I grew up on the streets too. I ran away from my folks.
Sad. I guess it's better not to know than to be disappointed.
You're smart.
We at the boarding school are considered the most problematic. No one says we're smart.
Well, I think so.
If you want to make a deal with us, we offer our terms.
I listened to them carefully, and then I was shocked. What? Adopt you? Who's going to let me? I have no home and no steady income.
Believe me, the boarding school will be glad to get rid of us. It doesn't matter who, as long as we leave. We need freedom of action, space for hobbies, and you need helpers.
And what kind of trouble are you causing?
And you come to our principal. She'll tell you everything.
I went there the next day. I'm more or less decently dressed. I went into her office and started a conversation. The director was surprised, asked me if I was talking about these boys, and then told me that they were always breaking appliances, didn't talk to anyone, and were isolated. The police had come by and said that the boys had broken something even when they were at the police station. I hesitated at first, but then I agreed anyway. They didn't even ask me to show them my house. I just signed the documents and showed them mine. Everything was done. Ralph and Dolph were happy. I brought them to my place, the three of us cramped in together, but we still fit. I fed them well, and then I asked what their hobby was, but they didn't answer. In the evening, we went to the warehouses and got the refrigerators out of there and sold them during the day, so we made good money in a couple of months. I even rented another, bigger apartment. Ralph and Dolph would go out after hours, but they wouldn't tell me where. They would just come in at what time I told them to. And then I asked when their birthday was.
Today.
What? Are you serious? I left them at home, ran out, and bought a cake and a pizza. The boys were shocked at the sight of it. Dolph even cried. They said I was the best mom, and it touched my heart. I hugged them for the first time. They made a wish, and we proceeded to eat. Then they left, and I lingered. I began to worry. I went to the area they went to and saw the cops. Turns out the boys had stolen someone else's equipment again. I had to pay a fine. They were let go, and then Dolph was crying, saying it was their fault I had to pay for them. It's okay, just tell me why you are stealing new equipment from stores. It's okay to take something from me.
Yours is no good, we need new ones.
But what for? And the boys took me to the back, where they showed me the robot they had built. I was so surprised. Does it walk and talk?
What have you heard about artificial intelligence? That's our hobby.
At that point, I had an idea. I suggested getting parts from warehouses and then putting the robot up for sale online, and they agreed. We worked on the scheme in parallel, but now the boys spent a little more time at home working on the project. I was more relaxed that way anyway. Finally, after 6 months, the robot was ready, and we started advertising it on social networks. Eventually, the robot sold so well that we were offered a huge amount. We sold the first robot, and the boys started the second, then the third, and so on. They assembled clever machines from whatever tools were available. A year later, we made our first million. A lot of people found out about us. Even my parents showed up. But this time, we'd already bought our own house in a nice neighborhood, and I paid for the boys' expensive cybernetics courses. My parents were trying to get on my conscience that I had taken advantage of them. I mean, I was their child and all. So what? What do you care? I answered them rudely. They left, but not just like that. As it turned out, they reported it to the director of the boarding school, and she found out about the profits at the expense of the boys and gave me problems for it. She came to our house and threatened to take the children away. The boys weren't home. That bitch brought me to tears, and she said she would take them away by law. A couple of days later, I was summoned to court. I didn't want to tell Ralph and Dolph, but they figured it out when they saw the summons. I hugged them and left. In court, they were pushing me as hard as they could, and I was ready to give up. That's when the brothers came in.
We have the right to vote. We're 16 years old. If you refuse, it will be seen as an infringement of rights. We are citizens of our country. We will appeal to a higher authority.
Who let them in here? Throw them out.
Plaintiff, you said the boys can't walk because their foster mom broke their legs.
What? Broke their legs?
Quiet in the courtroom. Let the record reflect that. Making false accusations is a felony, punishable by fine and imprisonment. Plaintiff will deal with you later.
The boys came to the stand. They told everything clearly and competently. They showed the judge our pictures together, celebrating birthdays, Christmases, going for walks, even sleeping. Then they said that thanks to my support, they were able to discover their talents at a time when the principal was constantly suffocating them. And then they showed a video from a hidden camera in the house that I didn't know about, the moment the principal threatened me. 10 minutes later, the court ruled in my favor. The children were left to me. My parents were also sitting in the hall. I didn't even pay attention to them. So that's how we started a new life, and we're happy.
Hi, my name is Den. I don't want to sound unassuming, but if you haven't met any guys who don't have a lot of nobility or something, well, I'm one of them. I'm joking, and I'm not joking. In short, listen to my story. I guarantee you will be intrigued. And yes, I will be happy if you write your opinion in the comments, as well as like my story. Anyway, at first we lived as a small family. Dad, Mom, Sister Abby, and me. We lived like everyone else. Abby and I went to school, and my parents worked. We did not often relax with the family. Recently, we used to like to skate, and go to the movies together, or just sit at home and watch something, discuss, play Monopoly, and then entertainment became less and less. Abby and I have already asked our parents to sit with us, but each time we heard some excuses, especially from my mother, and then it turned out that she wanted to leave us. Yes, it was a nightmare. We didn't even believe it at first, but when my mother packed her bags and said that she had another one, it was a huge blow for our father. I was even afraid that he would never come to his senses, but little by little, we began to cope. Several years have passed since that moment, and I still remember how my mother ran out of the house to the taxi that arrived and did not even turn around. Of course, I was so angry. Abby was more upset, and Dad was in shock. And so, as soon as we all came to our senses, Dad gave us a gift. Guess what? I already had a bad feeling that day. I knew something bad was going to happen. I'd missed the first class, which was an important test. The teacher was mad at me, sent me to retake, and Abby had fallen off her bike that day and hurt her leg. I rushed to the medicine cabinet, but there wasn't even a green card. My mood was already spoiled. In the evening, we were waiting for my father. He promised to bring us delicious food and a restaurant. In the end, we set the table and were already hungry and waiting for my father, when suddenly the door opened and a woman came in instead of my father. Dad followed her in with a bunch of bags in his hands, and there was food. We got up and said hello like well-behaved children, took the package, and started unloading them. The lady said we were really cute and ran to wash our hands and then started helping us. We looked at her questioningly, but it wasn't proper to ask her out loud in front of a guest, so we just didn't say anything. It was just before dinner started that the father said the woman's name was Miss Tiara, but she interrupted him and told us to just call her Tiara. We also introduced ourselves and started eating. Judging by the dinner, and the way father carefully tended to her, it was obvious that they were dating, and not so long ago. When dinner was over, Abby and I went to our rooms. Before going to bed, Abby said she didn't like Miss Tiara, but I asked her to wait for her conclusions. After all, our dad is lonely, and it's normal for him to start a relationship all these years later. Our mother probably has her own family for a long time. Abby lowered her head and lay down on the bed. I made her promise not to tell my dad her opinion yet, at least until he officially made a statement. She agreed. Tiara had come to our house several times in the past week, and Abby still hadn't kept her promise. Tiara, she said to her as Miss picked up a glass of juice and sipped it slowly, "Are you sleeping with my father?" At that moment, Mrs. nose was full of juice. My father was choking on the meat, and I was all smiles. Father scolded her for asking such a direct question, but Tiara stopped him. She told Abby that she and Dad are dating, and she really hopes to be friends with us. My sister said that our family doesn't need such friends. "We're fine without you," she said. Dad scolded her again, and I excused myself, took her hand, and led her into the room. I talked to her, asked her not to do it again, and asked her to give my father a chance. After dinner, of course, we both had a lecture from my father. I asked him if he intended to marry her, to which my father did not answer clearly. Abby said she didn't like the tiara, but Dad asked her not to be jealous and to give her time to prove herself. Then he went to his room. At night of the same day, my father received a call from work and was told to go on a business trip urgently. This didn't happen before, so we were very confused. I didn't know what to do with Abby, even though she was already going to school, but she still seemed like a child to me. Dad immediately called Tiara and asked her to come. Yes, she agreed to look after us for a couple of days in his absence. It was polite of her, but Abby was hysterical. We quickly saw my father off and went to bed. Abby came to my room to talk. She said she didn't trust the woman, and I explained that she was just jealous of father, but that sooner or later he would get married. At that time, we had no idea what was waiting for us. Abby and I stayed up late that night. I passed out, and my sister couldn't sleep, so she went out for a drink of water. She woke me up in the middle of the night, and I didn't even know what was going on. Abby was frantic about Tiara going through Dad's things, but I didn't think it was strange. Let her dig. In the morning, we woke up to the gorgeous smell of pancakes. It turned out that Tiara made us breakfast, which was nice, and I thanked her for it, but Abby didn't even touch it. Then Tiara said that she wanted to make friends with us, so she came up with some games for us, and walks in the park. I thought it was a good idea, and Abby didn't say anything, but I dressed her and we went to the park. After walking for a couple of hours, we got hungry and returned home. While I was changing, Abby noticed something strange in the house, and she said that Tiara had found Dad's vault and was trying to break into it. And I didn't like it anymore. I went into my father's room, and Tiara quickly jumped out of there. "Oh, I thought you were asleep. Don't you sleep during the day?" She laughed nervously. Abby called her a thief and chased her out of the house. I asked her to leave politely and watched her go with a very unkind look. We called my father and asked him to come. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Wow, is Dad that fast? I opened the door, and there were police officers and a tear-stained Tiara. The uniformed man said they needed to talk to their father, but when they found out he wasn't there, he wanted to take Abby to the station. To my questions, he said that she was suspected of stealing someone else's ring. Her, the policeman said, pointed at the tiara. What? I asked. Yes, this is a mistake. It can't be. We see it for the first time in our lives, I shouted, but everything turned out to be useless. Tiara ran into our house and started turning everything over, and then opened the safe and pulled out her ring. Can you imagine my face? Abby started crying. I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. And then he said I did it. I took all the blame. They took me to the station, and I told Abby to wait for Father. After a few hours of waiting, my father arrived. He didn't know how to react, and the tearful Tiara rushed to his shoulder to cry. I didn't say anything. I knew he wouldn't believe me. He didn't take anything Abby said, because we're the only ones who know the code to the safe. And just when I thought I was really going to jail, Abby suddenly dragged my father home. She asked him to trust her, but I didn't know what she was up to. It turns out that our little smart girl remembered about the video cameras in our house. Dad looked at the records and saw everything for himself, then saved them and gave them to the police. I was released, and Tiara was put in my place. It turned out that she wanted to get rid of us, his children, so that we wouldn't get in her way. She only wanted to arrange their personal life, but we were superfluous there. It's a good thing we installed cameras a long time ago. My father was in shock, and for a long time asked us for forgiveness. Did you like our story? Then put likes, comment, and be sure to subscribe to the channel, friends.